Give us a thumbs up if you're ready to start. Yeah, cool. Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Lou Jane. I'm the Media Communications Officer here at Success for All. We are an education charity that prepares children and young people for a brighter future. And today, luckily for you guys, I'm also the host of Representation Matters, a Black History Month event, primarily for the voluntary sector here in the Northeast. I hope this event proves to be engaging, inspiring, and hopefully it'll also motivate you to have this conversation amongst your own colleagues and within your own workplace. Just before we get started, I just want to go into some general housekeeping notes that you've probably heard a million times before. Please can you make sure that you are on mute? We are recording this event as per the email that you have received, and we do plan on posting the video on our social media and uploading it onto YouTube. So if you do feel uncomfortable having your camera on, please feel free to turn it off. We are huge social media users and we highly encourage you to also get social with us. The hashtag for today's event is BHMNE21, and we would love to hear your thoughts, any key takeaways that you'll take from this event. Just use the hashtag and we'll make sure to read it and we share it amongst our own audiences. We have also enabled the chat function for this event. So if you have any questions, either to myself or to any of our speakers, please feel free to drop it in the chat. If for whatever reason that we don't get a chance to answer your questions, please drop me an email or give me a call and I will forward it on to the respective speaker to answer your questions. Because we are planning on sticking to a tight schedule. So yeah, if you have any questions that don't get answered, just drop me an email. And whilst we're on the topic of the chat function, we are expecting an incredible range of audiences from all across the world. So it'd be lovely if you could all start introducing yourself in chat. If you can tell us which organization that you're coming from and what you hope to take from today's event, that would be wonderful. So what can you expect from the event today? Well, we're going to briefly discuss what representation in terms of the non-profit sector is by what we mean, as well as why it matters. It is a hard-hitting conversation and we're not trying to tread on the topic lightly, and we don't want to sugarcoat any of the statistics or any of our experiences, but equally we're not here to shame anyone or to finger point at any organisations or charities. We're here to have an honest, open and critical conversation. We're also going to have a brief look at the state of the sector. So we're going to look at some statistics, what the data actually says compared to our own lived experiences. And most importantly, you're here to listen to the stories of our inspiring and incredible speakers, which, like you guys, I'm also super excited to hear what they have to say. And we're going to end with a little bit of networking with a twist. You have to stay till the very end to find out what that twist is. So what do we mean by representation when we talk about the non-profit sector in particular? The question that you should always ask yourself is, are our volunteers, staff, management, trustees reflective of the demographics that your charity is set out to support? For instance, here at Success for All, we try our very best to employ people from the communities that we set out to serve, because they are the ones with the lived experiences and the knowledge to truly make a huge difference and contribution to the communities that they are set out to support. The reason we are having this conversation is because a lack of representation can have significant consequences on service users, staff, and even the direction of a charity. And nowadays, we see a lot of funding aimed at Black, Asian, and ethnic minority communities. We see a lot of funding for LGBTQ communities and people with disabilities. But what it's really important for the charity sector to understand and grasp is that they have significant privileges, and there is a huge power dynamics that come into play, and it's really important that charity organisations understand before they enter those spaces the influence that they will be having on the communities. Equally, a charity shouldn't be entering a space if they're going to invade it and if they're going to enforce their own ideologies and ideas on the communities that they set out to serve. And that's why it's really important that a charity employs and takes on staff from the communities that they set out to support. And ultimately, its representation matters because it's really hard to be what you can't see. If you can't see a CEO from the same city as you who speaks like you, talks like you, how are they ever supposed to achieve it when the only time they see themselves reflected is on an advert where they are seen as a charity case study? It's time that we take ownership of this narrative and really spin it on its head and make a positive contribution to society, because ultimately, as a charity organisation, you are there to fight inequality. Without further ado, I am going to introduce you to our operations manager at Success for All, Busala, if you want to take the forefront.
Yeah, thanks, Lou Jane, for the introduction. Hi, yes, my name's Busala. I'm from Success for All, and we're an educational children's society. And I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about why representation matters for us and also, you know, for Success for All as a whole. So the first thing I'm going to talk to you about is the Obama effect. And I'm laughing because I'm starting my presentation talking about Obama. But actually, while in office, Obama had a concrete positive influence on Black Americans' academic performances. By simply defying underlying negative stereotypes and biases, this had a profound positive effect on exam performances for Black Americans. And I'll tell you a little story about my personal experience as well. When I was younger, one thing that used to always stick out in my mind is that my dad told me that he would never live to see a Black president or Black prime minister, but he'd hope that in my lifetime, I may see that. And basically what that did is start this subconscious narrative that people like me aren't meant to be in positions like Obama. We all use our experiences, our cultures, our ideas, our family and friends to make sense of the world around us. And that's what social psychology talks about as our in-groups, groups that we belong to. And our in-groups are, you know, we have certain rules that we create ourselves about how we act within our groups. We also use our experiences to decide which groups we definitely don't belong to, but also what type of careers people in our groups do, or how well people in our group do at school and education. That's why in the STEM community is spending a lot of money and research into getting women into STEM careers. In essence, what they're wanting to do is to change the subconscious narrative young girls may have around choosing a STEM career. That's also why Lewis Hamilton and Stormzy are funding projects that are working to change the subconscious narrative of young Black children about their future in academic careers. So Lewis is looking to increase the number of Black STEM teachers, and Stormzy is providing funded places for Black students at prestigious universities. But why is investing money and time so important? Well, diversity in leadership roles leads to better innovation and improved organizational performances, something that has been researched time and time and again. Having a fully diverse team allows for a diverse range of ideas and narratives to be accounted for. It also allows people to bring their whole selves to work. I hope that anyone looking in at Success for All will hopefully see themselves or their in-group reflected in our team. I hope that they will see that their in-groups reflected, and that by doing so, their in-group values will be respected and their voice will be heard. So when we're looking to set up a new hub or club, it can be a really lengthy process, because what we would like to do and what we try and do is to recruit and train those living or those who have grown up in a specific area to be the leaders of that community hub. So they look and talk like the children and families attending. When recruiting our volunteers, we encourage and promote and celebrate diversity so that the children being tutored or are being tutored and empowered by someone who grew up in the same area, that are part of their in-group, someone they can recognize as part of their in-group. A quick story. I also had a tutee once who told me that her accent meant that she wasn't able to go into politics, or it would be very difficult for her to go into politics. So I showed her a video of Dennis Skinner and John Prescott. But that's not to say that everything we do at Success for All is perfect. I'm also very concerned that we strongly lack male perspective in our operations team. And my fear is that dads or boys and teenagers may not want to approach us because they may think we're a female-only charity, which is not the case. Increasing diversity in the charitable sector is an active process. It's something that won't happen on its own. We need to work together as a community to improve it. So I'm going to end with chocolate. And the reason why is because there isn't just one type of chocolate. There is a huge range of chocolate. And why? Because businesses in the confectionery the confectionery world want everybody's money. It isn't good enough for them to say, well, actually, you know, this selection of the population aren't really going to buy our products. What they'll actually say is they're like, well, why aren't they buying our products? And what they'll do is they'll go out and they'll speak to them. They'll run focus groups. They'll find out what they like. They'll find out what they're into. And then they'll adapt, they'll change, sometimes rebrand, so that everybody's in-group is accounted for, i.e., so everyone's money is taken. And that's it.
Thank you, Ursula. So how did we come about? So the way that we came about hosting this event and coming to the realization that we really needed to have this talk was through an activity that myself and Ursula did that involved actively looking at charity organisations, particularly here in the Northeast, to see how representative they truly were of the communities they set out to support. Naturally, I sort of knew that there was an issue, and so did Ursula from the events that we were sort of networking at, but we really didn't grasp how big of an issue it was until we did this activity. And so I would like for you to spend the next 5 minutes to just have a look around the Northeast charities or the charities within your locality or within your region, because I'm aware that we have a few international attendees today, to see how representative they were. And I would love to hear what your thoughts are on what you find in the comments. So if you can spend the next 5 minutes, say we'll come back at around just before 20 past. Yeah, and just sort of have a look around and see what you can find. That would be great. And drop any findings in the chat. If you've got any questions, please put your hand up or drop it in the chat. No questions? Okay, I'll see you in 5. Okay, we can start slowly wrapping up that activity. But please do share your findings with us in the chat. And remember, this isn't about pointing fingers or shaming any charities, which is why we'd love for you if you don't name anyone in particular. It's more about seeing it. And then if you are able to see it, then you are able to take action on it. Like we've said in the start, lack of representation can have a significant consequences on communities that you set out to support. But until you actually see it, you're unlikely to make any sort of changes or any policy implementations that are more likely to improve representation. And reality is the whole sector has a lot of work to do. When you look at the macro statistic, 9% of the voluntary sector workforce comes from an ethnically minorised background. 9%, that's quite small, and there is a huge amount of work to be done nationally and even internationally as well. But when we start looking at microscopically at the Northeast in particular, we start to see that the Northeast has one of the lowest, if not the lowest, representation rates, especially amongst CEOs and boards of trustees. And you are all here today to hear from those sort of the CEOs and the trustees, to hear what it's actually like to work in those positions and the barriers that they faced and why it's important to have representation within the sector. You know, having a CEO from an ethnically minoritized background can significantly improve your charity, not only in the terms of the way that you look at communities and how you actually reach them, but in terms of the positive impact on the charity direction and your impact. Like I said earlier, we're all here to sort of make a positive impact on society. We're all here fighting against inequality and making this world a better place for everyone. But only once we can get a true representation within our own organisations can we set out to achieve that. And yeah, so today we're here to listen to what our speakers have to say. And our first speaker is Steph, who is the CEO of St. Oswald's Hospice. Steph, if you are in the room, do you mind introducing yourself? And
I am here. Yeah, I'm Steph Edusei. I've been Chief Exec at St Oswald's for about 18 months now. Do you want me to say more than that and to continue? Or?
Yeah, do you want to just talk about your sort of experience in the sector and what it's been like for you? Any barriers that you faced?
I didn't know whether you were going to get us all to introduce ourselves separately or not. So just excuse me while I have a quick cough because I've suddenly got a frog in my throat.
No.
That's what happens when I eat my lunch just before speaking. So yes, I'm Steph Edusei and I am, as I said, Chief Executive here at St Oswald's Hospice. And for those of you that don't know St Oswald's, I'll tell you a little bit about the organisation first, and then I'll tell you a little bit about me and my experiences. So St Oswald's is about 35 years old, and the hospice itself is based in Gosforth in Newcastle. And we have we cater literally from babies right the way through children and young adults to adults. And we care for people who have life-limiting illnesses, and that includes end-of-life care. We also have a lymphedema service. So lymphedema is when you get collections of lymphatic fluid, particularly in arms and legs, and we have a service that deals with that. And that really came about because a lot of people who've had cancer treatment can get lymphedema, although actually people who haven't had cancer treatment can get it as well. So we've now got quite a big lymphedema treatment service and are actually specialists in lymphedema treatment in the Northeast. So as I say, we have people from tiny babies right the way up to people in their 80s and 90s. And a lot of people think hospices are the place that you go to die. And yes, some people come to us and they stay with us as inpatients and they die here. But actually we do far more than that. So most of our children and young adults come to us for short breaks and respite. These are children and young adults who have life-limiting illnesses. So in the old days, they wouldn't have been expected to live beyond their teens. But actually the reason it's now a children and young adult services, they are living longer because of advances in medicine and care. So they come to us for breaks so that they get a really safe and happy environment for a break, but also their families and carers get breaks as well. We do deal with end of life for children and young adults as well, but actually that's less often because quite often children will either die at home, which we support them to do, or they'll die in hospital. And then adults, if you have a life-limiting illness, so that could be cancer, but it could be Parkinson's, it could be motor neuron disease, it could be a whole host of reasons why people have been given a terminal diagnosis. You can access our services and we will support you in whatever way is necessary, be that pain management, be it social care, be it complementary therapies, and we really help you and your family. And if you choose to die at home, we support you to die at home. So it's one of the things that really we want people to realise is that it's not a case of you come in and you never go out, because even the patients that die with us will quite often come and access our services and then they go home and then they come back again, and we have quite long relationships with people. So it's a really lovely place. And then on top of that, we have to raise funds because we're not funded really by the NHS. We receive some funding from them. So we have 25 shops and we have a huge fundraising operation as well. So it really is quite a diverse in terms of the things that we do organisation. But one of the things that everybody was saying when I joined and is really aware to me is that in terms of our staff and our volunteers, we are not particularly diverse. Even in age, actually a lot of our volunteers tend to be older, but we are doing some stuff around that. And in terms of the people that access our service, we have a real mismatch between our local population and the demography of the people that use our services. And we're just starting some work to really try to understand why people from minoritized communities are not accessing our services. Is that they're not being told about them? Is it a choice? And how can we understand what's behind that so that we can actually make sure that we make our services right for the people that need them, rather than we have to fit in our little model of care to be able to access our services. So that's a piece of work that we're just starting, and you know, if people want to come back to me in a year's time, I'm more than happy to talk about where we get to with that. So a little bit about me. My background is the NHS. I started as a clock typist in the NHS, moved through being a medical secretary and on into management. And I spent 18.5 years working in the NHS. And then left and went into the voluntary community sector. So I ran Health Watch Newcastle and Health Watch Gateshead, which is like a health and social care watchdog for people who don't know what it is. And it's all about listening to service users and the public and getting health and social care providers to do the same thing and then to take action on what they hear. And a lot of work that we did was really reaching out to cells and listening to communities. And trying to make sure that they had a voice and that they had a seat at the table and that we represented their views as best that we could. So in that term, representation was really important to me in that role. So I wanted to talk a little bit, one of the questions that I was asked was, what barriers did you face? And when I was preparing this talk, because I do a little bit of preparation, may not seem like it, but I do, I was instantly hit by massive imposter syndrome. Now, I used to suffer from really bad imposter syndrome, and I've done a lot of work to get that under control. And most of the time, my little voice is quiet, but it really started shouting at me. And the reason it started shouting at me was it was saying, you haven't faced any barriers, what are you talking about? And then I actually got really quite emotional. And the reason is, and I know that a lot of people who are on the meeting today will identify with this, is that I have. But actually what we do is we just keep plowing through, and those little micro incivilities and microaggressions and little things that are said and done and ways people look at you and they get your name wrong over and over and over again, all of that piles up on you. But because you just keep going, you don't recognize it. It's a bit like with some of the stuff that's gone on around gender. And when people started talking about all the things that women do to make sure they're safe. And I don't know about the other women in the group, but I actually kind of went, oh God, this is so exhausting. But it's just what we do. We don't think about it. It's the way we are. We just do it. It's automatic. It's drilled into us. That is the way that we get through life. So those barriers of, like I say, constantly getting my name wrong. For me, one of the big things in talking about representation is the amount of time I will go into a room of senior leaders in health and care, and there'll be 100 people in the room, and I am the only, obviously, black face. It's just frustrating, it's saddening, it's exhausting. The fact that when something is said that is obviously discriminatory, and I have to be the person that speaks up, it's exhausting. It's exhausting that I have to sit and have a conversation with myself about, do I really want to say this? Do I really want to stick my head above the parapet? Do I really want to be that person who once again is talking about equality, diversity and inclusion? Will everybody think that the only reason I'm talking about this stuff is because it affects me? And I can assure you that I talk about equality, diversity and inclusion for everybody. I'm able-bodied, talk about it, and disability. I'm straight, I talk about it for LGBT. So it's not about personal gain and benefit, it's because it's important. This stuff is really important. But actually, there's that real awareness for me of there's a real risk that people go, Steph is the EDI woman. There's also an expectation that I know everything about every ethnicity and every religion and every culture on the face of the earth, and that I can be the expert. And of course I can't. And within this, I'm letting you know that I have huge, huge privilege. I'm light-skinned. English is my first language. I'm a Geordie. You know, how much more privilege can you get? I've had a very good education. I'm middle class. So I use that privilege as best I can to support other people. But if I'm getting that kind of barrier in the way, I'm really aware of the barriers that other people get. So what can organisations do? Well, you know what, we've probably all got policies and procedures coming out of our ears. Policies and procedures are not the way forward. This is about mentoring, and the mentoring that goes both ways. People who have mentors succeed more. People who have coaches succeed more. We need to make sure that we are really going out and not just saying to somebody, to put you like a mentor, saying, I want you to have a mentor because you show talent and it's a good thing for you. Because actually quite often we will say, no, actually it's all right. I don't want to step forward. I don't want to stick my head above the parapet. It's about reaching out to people. It's about allyship. It's about making sure that you're not relying on that person of colour in the room to be the person who calls things out and says, that's not wrong, that's wrong. It's about really making sure that you are living and understanding issues rather than just sitting and waiting for somebody to say something or waiting for something to be pointed out. Go and speak to people. Ask people about what their experiences are. I'm not expecting white people to understand what it's like to be black. Why would you? You're not. But actually learn, ask questions, inform yourself, and then use your privilege and use your standing to make sure that it's not just us that are fighting the battles. So I'm off to a conference in a week or two, a Hospice UK conference. Once again, I suspect I will be, if not the only, one of the few black faces in the room, and I'm fairly certain I'll be the only black chief exec there. And I'll put on the big girl knickers, and I know that's probably not politically correct for them to say, but that's what I do. I have to pull them right up there, and I'll go in there and I'll fight once again. But what would be really lovely would be if I had a whole lot of people standing alongside me that were saying, look at this room, look at the lack of diversity in this room. What are we going to do about it?
Oh, wow. Thank you, Steph. That was incredible. And you hit the nail right on the head. And it's crazy how many events you end up going to where you are often the only one from an ethnic minority or a black woman, and you're like, do they not see this? Is it just me that can see this? Or what is happening here? And yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. Our next speaker is Shewley, the manager of the Millin charity. Shewley, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi there, I'm Shewley, the manager of the Millin charity. Thanks for asking me to come here today. I'm going to be talking about why it's important to have representation in our workforce, the barriers women face accessing the labour market, and why it's important to continue to support women from ethnically minoritized communities to access the labour market and to ensure diversity is as wide as possible. Go to the next slide, Luigi. I've been working for the Millin charity for over 15 years now, helping support women to increase better their situations and their quality of life. The Millin charity provides enterprise services and training programs to help women become financially and economically active. My role includes the management of the charity and overseeing a range of projects that we deliver, programs and services. We deliver a range of bespoke accredited training courses. We deliver enterprise workshops, skills development session, the opportunity for women to get enterprise experience through going out to trade at markets, and one-to-one advice and support. We also support women with their aspiration of getting into employment, and if they've got a business idea, to be able to support them into starting their own enterprise and then becoming self-employed. Go to the next one, Eugene. Thank you. We work with women who face many inequalities and disadvantages, some who are very far away from the labour market, and this being a key factor of why there's underrepresentation in the first place. To improve this in our workplaces, we need to help women overcome these barriers. Women we work with at the Millin charity have low skills and qualifications. They have sometimes no accreditation or certification. Many women face language barriers, with English being their second language. So women need support with literacy and numeracy, which stops them from being able to move forward. We have many women who suffer from long-term unemployment because they have family responsibilities, which includes kind of bringing up their children at home. They might have caring responsibilities. They live in poverty situations, have low confidence, very little aspiration, and sometimes no network of support. Many women that we work with face inequalities and discrimination, and that does stop them from wanting to move forward. To help break down these barriers, as an organisation, it's been crucial to provide the intense support, the capacity building, the holistic all-around support offer, building the skills of women. The confidence building is very important, and the learning programs that we provide need to be around the needs of the women. They need to be accessible. If we want to be able to begin to close that gap and want to have representation of diversity in our workforces, it's crucial to support women to be able to be in a position where they can go out there and compete for these available job roles that are there. Next one, please, Luigi. Once women are in employment, I think this is one of the issues, is being able to climb up the ladder. Why aren't there enough women from minoritized backgrounds in senior positions? From what I know, and I suppose experiences, there are many barriers faced accessing senior positions. Sometimes it's about who you know and what you know. Many women don't have the networks or the contacts to be able to access certain higher job roles. Access to the opportunity, I think, needs to be made by the organisation for them to look at their inclusivity in their organisation. And if they want the benefits of diversity, then the support needs to be there. And I think this can be taken place by mentoring opportunities, traineeship programs, coaching opportunities to help existing minoritized employees to be able to move up the ladder. There's a big absence of role models. There's no one there to kind of look up to. The inspiration's not there. There's no one to follow. So the confidence for people like ourselves is not there. And sometimes you feel maybe I'm not good enough to be able to do a position like that. There's another factor that also needs to be taken into consideration, is that women from minoritized backgrounds have cultural and religious obligations that they need to meet. This coinciding with a challenging job role and a job role that consists of a lot of time consuming, it's difficult to be able to do both, and sometimes that deters women from being able to kind of move up. And again, I think this can be overcome by employers looking at methods to attract a wider group of people, such as job share opportunities. Oh, Luigi, I think you've moved forward too much. If you go back to two more. Yeah, just do that. So such as job shares and part-time opportunities. We need to understand these groups and make provisions for them to be able to support women from these backgrounds, because the work-life balance is there in this situation. And finally, why does representation matter? To have a diverse workforce, it's just the next one there, supporting. The next one after that, Luigi. Just before that one. Oh, I think got a missing slide there. Let's have a look, slide 6. Slide 6. Why does representation matter?
Oh, I don't have that one.
Oh, that's a bit strange. I'll just talk about that slide. So I think that slide was about why representation matters. To have a diverse staff team means that you can offer services that are accessible to different needs. You have an enriched workforce full of experiences and expertise where colleagues can learn from each other. Women we work with have stated they've been comfortable to attend and take part, as they felt that those who were helping them understood their backgrounds and their lifestyles. They felt that they could relate to those that were helping them because they felt confident accessing the service in the first place. They felt comfortable and they felt safe. In an organisation where you have a team that come from different backgrounds, enables you to deliver service that's culturally appropriate. Staff team have the personal experiences of the people that they're trying to support, and others in the team can actually accommodate this as well. At the Millin charity, we work with volunteers that speak many different languages who support anyone with communication needs. And finally, I think it's important to see women in job roles and working roles to be able to inspire other women to have the belief that they are able to do the same. And finally, building an inclusive organisation does come from the top and it needs to filter down. Management do need to play a key role in playing a part in putting into place systems to enable better access for minoritised communities. And we need to be able to continue to support women to build their capacity and skills, enabling them to thrive in our economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Shewley. I'm sorry about that.
All right, sorry, those
some very important points, and again echoing what Steph said as well about having a role model and someone that you can look up to achieve those senior positions, I think is really important. Our next speaker is Nitin, the Commissioning and Police Officer in the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner for Northumbria, and also the Trustee at Connected Voice, who have supported us in putting together this event today. Nitin, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us about your role as a trustee?
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm Nitin Shukla. I work as the Commissioning and Policy Officer at the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner for Northumbria, Kim McGuinness, and I have a huge privilege of being a trustee of Connected Voice. And I'll talk about a handful of other organisations that I also have some involvement with a little later. I think I would start off by saying I find it quite frustrating that from what we've heard so far, that it's the kind of conversations we were having 5-10 years ago. So what's really changing in relation to inclusion and the things that matter to us the most? You know, many of us face inequalities every day, and this could be either as recipients of services or in employment. And my reflection and experience is that there are services that aren't really responsive to the needs of our diverse communities. I guess the challenge is really understanding how well do we know our communities, which continue to change on a daily basis. And so if we don't really have an understanding of those communities, then and we're not able to engage with them, how do we then ensure that the services that we deliver are responsive to their needs? We've had years of equalities legislation, and for me, it just really proved ineffective in terms of the legislation. So at the end of the day, who is holding organizations to account in ensuring that they actually deliver for all of our citizens in the region or in the areas in which you work? And so I think accountability is really, really important. And that's why I'm delighted to share my thoughts and views this afternoon around representation, because that really is really, really important. I think for me, leadership is absolutely crucial in tackling inequalities in our communities and in society. Where there is good evidence of this agenda being driven by leaders, we've seen positive change. I'll just give you one very quick example. Working for the PCC, some 3 years ago, we recognized in terms of Northumbria Police and its workforce that it did not represent the communities that the police serve. Cut a long story short, we did some work with the police, introduced a positive action program, and in 2.5 years, they recruited nearly 100 police officers from diverse backgrounds into the organization. And that was something that was really driven through from our office and by our police and crime commissioner. So really, for me, leadership is absolutely crucial to ensuring that, you know, we have a just society, and that's really, really important. And I think for me, the reason I have got involved as a trustee, and it was interesting listening to Steph when she talked about what barriers does she face. I've got to say that the roles that I currently have, one is a trustee of Connected Voice, and just as very quickly, so I sit on the Newcastle University Council. which is their governing body. I'm a chair of governors of a primary school, and there are a couple of other organizations. So I've got to say, all of these opportunities were where I was invited to join rather than me looking out for opportunities to join. It was where I was invited to consider becoming a trustee or a governor or what have you. And I'm really, really pleased that I took those opportunities, because what it's enabled me to do is to absolutely influence change in all of the organizations on which I have a role as a trustee or as a governor. And that's really, really important. And we've seen that in all of the organizations that, you know, in terms of its the values and what's important in terms of having people that support at the heart of the organization and ensuring the delivery of services are responsive is where we're getting to. And so for me, taking those opportunities have been absolutely crucial, because it has absolutely enabled me to influence change in those organizations, for which I'm really, really grateful. What I bring to my role as a trustee is my experience of having worked in equality and diversity for many years. I have lived experience of having faced discrimination and prejudice, and kind of issues that affect health and well-being of our communities. And so when we talk about representation, and Steph made reference to this, it's really, really important that through my role, I'm able to amplify the voices of those who are less often heard, which I think is really, really important. And it goes back to how well then do we know our communities. And so in terms of representation, I think bringing that difference and insight and thought to the way in which our boards operate. And that's really, really important. You know, I'm not there just focusing on equality, diversity, and inclusion. Through my work, I have experience of performance management. So, you know, it's asking those kind of questions where it's about ensuring that organizations are actually making a difference to the lives of people that they're actually working with. Not very process driven, but it's actually outcome focused, you know, and ensuring organizations that there is good governance in terms of how it manages finances, how decisions are made, and all those kind of things which I do contribute to. In each of those organizations, I've taken upon myself when an opportunity arises to step forward and to take senior roles within those organizations, because I think that's really, really important. So representation is absolutely crucial, absolutely crucial. And I really hope that we can strive to continue to make difference, because when I started off by saying some of my frustrations are that we are having the kind of conversations we were having a few years back. And so what progress are we actually making? And whilst I appreciate that we've made some progress, there is a long way to go. Now, a couple of things I want to finish off with. I think sometimes there are organizations that are looking for trustees. I'll often get people ringing me up or contact me and saying, we're looking to diversify our board. Do you know anybody who might be interested? So there are organizations who are looking, sometimes they're not really too sure how they go about engaging with or making people aware of those opportunities. At the same time, there are people in our communities who might not necessarily be aware of what's happening. Sometimes I think they need a bit of encouragement. And on a couple of occasions, I've been able to do that, because where organizations were looking for a trustee and I knew of an individual who I believed could make a contribution, was having that conversation, encouraging, supporting, a bit of mentoring from my own experience to say, you know what, you would make a really good trustee and contribute to that organization. So I think there is a little bit of, when we talk about at the moment, there's lack of representation. I understand that. But there are organizations at the same time, I believe, who are actively looking to address this on their boards. But I think it's about how we manage that. And I know Colette, for example, who's the trustee at Connected Voice, and her work at Community Foundation is very much about matching trustees to organizations, and she'd be a good ally. So that's all I want to say at the moment. But I'll be very, very happy to take any questions.
Yeah, if anyone's got any questions for Nitin or any of our speakers, please drop them down in the chat and we can answer them once all of our speakers have had a chance to sort of talk through their roles. Our final speaker for today is David. David is a corporate degree apprentice at Morrison's and a service user who has been supported by Success for All. And we wanted him to share his story of why it's important to have representation from the perspective of a service user. David, the floor is open to you.
Yeah, I think there's been some incredible speakers, so I'm going to try my best to make sure the standard is still kept high. So just quickly before I begin, I'd just like to say a massive thank you to Lou Jane, a massive thank you to Busala. I can see Caroline there in the background, a massive thank you to her as well for giving me this opportunity. And I think the reason for having me on is just to make it a bit more personable. Often at times we look at facts and figures and it'll be like Successful has helped 5,000, 6,000 people, but their names, they're individuals that have names, you know, they've helped David, they've helped Abdul, they've helped Sarah, they've helped Mike. And also to think about the compound effect that not just helping Mike, but they've allowed Mike to be in a position where he can now offer his younger brother a job interview, allowing the next generation of his family to have a better chance of success. You know, they've helped Sarah in a way where she's able to create a business and now she can employ people in a local community. And I think just using an example a bit closer to home, I look at my sister, who's now a medical doctor, and she was both directly and indirectly a benefactor of Success for All. And because of her work and what she's doing now, you know, a father is able to go home to his children because she was able to detect early signs of cancer, or a young person is now able to have many more years of their life because she was able to treat them for sepsis. And it's that kind of impact that through Success for All helping her, she's now able to have a wider societal impact. So that's just my quick twos on social mobility and the importance and the compound effect. And so now I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and my story. So I'm a first-generation immigrant. I moved to the United Kingdom at 5 years old with my mum and sisters. And I wouldn't say I was bad. I wasn't really a bad child, but I think, you know, some students do need a bit more support than others. And obviously, you know, with classroom sizes, at times it's not really a luxury, something teachers can afford to do. And so primary school, I wasn't the most well-behaved. I bounced around 3 different primary schools. And then I got to high school and surprise, surprise, my behavior got even worse. And so throughout the periods of year 7 to year 8, I would say I really struggled in the schooling system. So much so that around January of year 8, the school, whose name I'm not going to mention, my lips are sealed, the school turned around and basically said they didn't want me anymore. And because of the time of year it was quite difficult for students to find admission into schools. And you could also imagine that schools aren't exactly lined up to admit a child that has a history of behavioural problems. And so that's where my mum kind of took the big decision to pull me out of school, and she wanted to homeschool me. But now you can imagine she's a widow, a single mother with 3 children, and you probably understand that financially she wasn't in the best of positions. And so she reached out to Caroline, sorry, it's the Nigerian in me, Caroline. She reached out to Caroline as she was the head of Success for All at that time. And through her connection with learning hubs, as well as having access to private tutors, Caroline and the team were able to sort out a comprehensive homeschooling plan for me. And I remember being 13, and it was really strange because all my life, everyone had washed their hands of me. Nobody really wanted anything to do with me. But here I have this woman and this charity running around to create a homeschooling plan for me, you know. And it was also a bit of a period of cognitive dissonance. So I was doing the homeschooling for 6 months. And for the 13 years of my schooling career, I was being told by teachers that, you know, you have anger problems, You know, I remember one teacher looked at me just really confused, and she says, "What is wrong with you?" I was called a kleptomaniac. And then one that really stuck with me was when a teacher actually looked me in the eye and said, you're gonna end up in prison one day. And to hearing all those things, and I'm a strong believer, and if you hear something enough times, especially at a young age, whether positive or negative, you tend to internalize it. But then for the next 6 months working, being homeschooled by Success for All, I'm hearing things like, you've got potential, you're intelligent, you know, if you work hard, you can do it. And there were often times where I'd give up and I'd kick off. And in the schooling system, when a child behaves that way, there's the door, stand outside the classroom, they give up on you. But it was really confusing to see that when I'd go through these spells, the volunteers would sit there, be patient, and work through with me. And I also remember as well, there's a lady from Oswald, and her role essentially was to assess homeschooling facilities to make sure they were adequate. And she turned around and she said, in all her years of assessing homeschooling facilities, she's never seen a young person that has been supported so much. And so I did the 6 months with Successful. It was a great experience. I really needed it at that point in my life. And I found a new school, which is named, I will say, Ponteland High School. And you would think after all the things I'd been through and all the support I'd received, I'd go into school and I'd learn and knuckle down. But, you know, 13, I probably wasn't still there quite yet. And so my first year of being back into the schooling system was quite difficult. And then it got to around year 10. And I saw Caroline and I saw Successful, went to visit, saw the tutors, the volunteers, and I thought about my mum, and I really looked long and hard in the mirror, and I just saw how much investment so many people put into me, and how everyone had run around to do this for me. And so I thought, do you know what it is? At the end of the day, if I'm not going to do it for myself, at least let me do it for those people that have believed in me and tried. And so, yeah, 10, I got my head down and started listening, working hard, and finished high school with 9 GCSEs. I then got into sixth form, and I managed to achieve 3 A levels. And I think that it's a very small thing and it's not the biggest of achievements, but for me, I was able to finish my sixth form and my final days in high school as president of Ponteland Community High School. And it was just such a proud moment when I look back at how I started school and how I was kind of not really supported and being called all these things, and everyone washed their hands, to now being the head pupil. And so after I finished my sixth form, I then went on to a sponsored degree apprenticeship with Morrison's, which I'm now in my 3rd final year, and it's been a fantastic scheme and I've learned so much. And I think just to bring it back to the topic of today's conversation, why representation matters. And so often at times I'll see the newspaper or see the media and I'll see young Black men, and the media does a fantastic job of giving us a great media image. But I'll look at these young boys and young men, and you know, they'll be on the newspapers for gang crime, drug crime, and stay with me here because I'm going somewhere. But as bizarre as it might sound, I think, how intelligent are these young men? You know, the leadership and communication skills required to run a gang has to be exceptional. You know, the skills required to successfully evade capture from the police, you have to have a bit of wit about you. You know, and thirdly, and I know I'm not advocating this in the slightest, but the logistical and financial operation needed to run a drug empire, you have to be quite savvy. And so I take a step back and I think, well, what if these young men were placed in the right environment? Because in the right environment, these young men become your accountants, they become your managers, they become your CEOs, they become your lawyers, they become your social workers. And I also think back to myself at 13, where I was at a crossroads where I could have gone one or two ways, and whatever limited intelligence I did have, it would have been used to the wrong thing. But these people at Successful saw me and were able to take the skills I had and use it in a positive way to society. And the same way I look at those young boys is, if only they're given the opportunity and the chance, they could be a benefit to society. And so I'm thinking, just asking myself the question, how do we tap into this talent pool? How do we tap into this resource? But then I stop and I understand that I'm a very strong believer in this saying, and it says, in order to solve a problem, you have to really understand the problem. And while empathy is an amazing thing and it's an incredible thing, I use this example sometimes when talking to my friends about women's issues. And I grew up in a household full of women all my life. It's all I really know. And I've watched them, I've heard their stories, I've seen them grow up. And as empathetic as I can be, I can't sit here today with a straight face and tell everyone here that I know what it's like to be a woman, because I don't. And there's a song by a rapper called Dave, it's called Black. I'm not endorsing you to listen to this song, some of the lyrics are quite explicit, but there's one particular line that sticks with me, and it says, "You've struggled, but your struggle isn't a struggle like mine." And what does that mean? And I'm not here to belittle or judge anybody's struggle, because we all have our own cross to carry. We all have our own unique problems we have to go through. But there are certain struggles as a young Black man that unless you are a young Black man, you'll never really be able to understand. I use an example of, one day you're this harmless, smiley kid and old ladies are giving you lollipops and they're playing with your hair, and then you get lost and the police are helping you find your mum and your parents. And then the next day, the same police officers are harassing you on a daily basis. And those same old ladies now cross the street when they see you. And so by having such understanding of the inner mind of a young Black man, it really comes from other young Black people. And so my idea behind this is, by having people of color on board in representation, they provide such a great insight and depth into the day-to-day lives and struggles of these people in these communities. Why? Because they've lived it, they've been there, they know it. And I also believe in stakeholder. Sometimes when you see a young Black man on a newspaper, some people can just brush it off because it's not someone they know. But for our community, these are our brothers, these are our sons, these are our uncles, these are our neighbors. And so naturally, you already have a vested interest in helping bring out the best in these people. And so it also goes to that point of, I don't believe in a shotgun approach. When it comes to tackling crime, a lot of people use Glasgow as an example, in the knife crime in Glasgow. But I say, what works in a white working class area to tackle issues will not work in an Asian working class area. And the same said that what works in an Asian working class area to tackle issues will not work in an Afro-Caribbean area. We need to be dynamic in the way we approach these things. It's not a shotgun approach, but to understand that the UK is very different and has very different subcultures. And if our goal here as people from social mobility charities is to help make the UK more socially mobile, we need to understand our stakeholders and the different groups and the different communities. And by having people who understand those communities in depth, and don't get me wrong, I'm a strong believer in empathy, but like I said, if you haven't lived it, if you haven't grown up in the culture, the insight you have will always be limited to a certain degree. But by having these people, you're able to then create and formulate strategies and plans to tackle the different social mobility problems and the different diverse areas. And so I'm just going to use a quick example. I've got 1 minute left, but I'll just say a very quick example. And as trivial as it might sound, it's actually a very strong example. And so I had the privilege of attending summer school at Success for All. And during the summer school, there was a lot of young Black men, but there was also young Black men who were mentors and helping facilitate, and they were able to create the sort of atmosphere and draw young Black men in because they knew what we enjoyed. And as trivial as it sounds, like I said before, but for every single hour I spent in summer school was an hour I wasn't on the street corner. For every hour I spent in summer school was an hour I wasn't getting groomed by a gang or getting involved in God knows what. And it's those things, it's those times that really make the pivotal change in young people's lives. So thank you for listening. And I think just to summarize really quickly is, the UK is diverse, it's different, and social mobility should be for all communities and all cultures within the UK. So thank you everybody for listening to my talk.
Amazing. Thank you so much, David. You've done an amazing job. Thank you so much for joining us today and for accepting our invitation. You've shared on so many topics and so many issues that us charities have to tackle head on, and it's been amazing to sort of connect with you and hear your story. I'm just going to open the floor to any questions. So if anyone has any questions to any of our speakers, Steph and Nitin. Steph's not here, but Nitin, are you still around? Nitin might not be here as well, but if you've got any questions for David or Shewley, please feel free to.
It's Nitin, I'm around, so I'm happy to take any questions.
If any of you have any questions, please either raise your hand or drop it in the chat. If you've got anything, anyone?
Rather than a question, I just want to say thank you to all the speakers for sharing quite personal experiences and speaking from the heart. They've all been fantastic at explaining their journey and their perception, you know, what's happened through that journey. And it's just, I've just learned so much. I really appreciate everything they've shared with us.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, it's been incredible having them join us today. I have a question. Daniel? Danielle, sorry.
Daniel, question to Nitin?
Yeah, stop. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, it's Sophie. Sorry, I wasn't right on there. I was wondering, we really want to diversify our board, but I think my main worry is appearing tokenistic and getting it wrong in terms of recruitment and sort of reaching out to people who we really want to involve and get around the table. And I wondered if you had any thoughts on that, about how we can approach it as a bunch of white people in a way that doesn't appear like we're just trying to tick some boxes, or I suppose I'm just nervous about getting the language wrong or getting something wrong in that process.
That's a really good question. Thank you very much. And yeah, I get that. I guess a bit of sensitivity around no one obviously seen as sort of ticking boxes. If you're genuinely wanting to look at the membership and to diversify your board and recognize contributions that people will make, then, you know, there are ways in which we can help. Connected Voice can help. I mentioned Colette, and I'd be happy to have a conversation outside of this meeting, who's at Community Foundation, who looks to match individuals with organizations. So there are ways in which we can do this. I personally have lots of, because of my work, I engage with a whole range of diverse communities, and I come across individuals where I'll often have conversations around, you know, whether they've considered, you know, becoming trustees and things like that. So you know, it's great that you know, these are the kind of conversations you're having within your organization, and, you know, be very, very happy to help support you through Connected Voice, or, as I say, happy to have a conversation outside of this, outside of this meeting. Yeah. Don't feel anything around, you know, tokenistic. Genuinely, if you're wanting to make those kind of changes, then that's great. And, you know, I'd be very, very happy to work with you.
Great. Will I find your contact details on the Connected Voice website, or should I message you now with my email address maybe?
So what I'll do is the organization, so Success for All probably have my email, or I'm happy to put it in the chat, and then anybody at any time wishes to make contact, please do not hesitate to drop me an email. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'll put my email here, and you can send me an email and I can forward it on to him. Great. So yeah, that's my email address for anyone that has any sort of questions that they want to specifically ask the speakers, or they want to have a private chat. Just feel free to drop me an email. We do have another question for you, Nitin. What changes do you think have happened over the years to create diversity?
What changes? You know, sorry if I give the impression that, you know, I think it's getting that balance between progress that we've made and recognizing that we have a way to go. For me, where I have seen changes, it's crucial that those kind of changes come about because it's been driven by the leadership within those organizations. You know, so I give that example at the PCC's office around workforce, and that was driven by our police and crime commissioner. So the positive changes I've seen is where there's a real buy-in from people at the individual or the individuals at the very top of the organization, whether it's at trustee level and then at senior level within those organizations, because there is that commitment to ensuring, you know, in terms of inclusion. And it's not about the reference I was made earlier about policies and procedures and all those kind of things, which we've all got. But at the end of the day, that real commitment to making a difference to the lives of people that, you know, we're working with. So for me, leadership is absolutely crucial. And then having a very, very clear focus and framework around how we're going to, you know, how those changes are going to be made, and, you know, where you can measure those clear outcomes and there's evidence behind it. So I think working within a framework that enables you to deliver the kind of things that you want to see, but as I say, it has to be absolutely driven by people at the top of the organization. It's an area that I've worked in for many years, and again, it's the kind of things organizations are not looking at, have been working on, and if there's things that we can do to help enable that and you know, add pace to it, then again, I'd be very, very happy to see what we can do to help support those who are signed into the meeting today.
Do we have any more questions before we go off for a break? No more questions? Last chance. Okay, wonderful. We're going to now go for a 10-minute break, and then when we would come back, we're going to do a quick networking and an opportunity to meet yourselves in like meet you, and we have a few questions we'd like to ask you about representation, and we just want to hear what you have to say, whether you've thought about the consequences not having representation can have, and whether you've sort of implemented anything to encourage more representation. So if you want to stick around, we'll see you at 20 past. We'll say 20 past. Thumbs up if that sounds like a plan. Great. Okay, I'll see you at 20 past. Go grab yourself some coffee or a cup of tea and see you there. Yeah, okay, cool. So it seems like most of you are back in. Thank you for sticking around to the second half. This is more of like chill networking and an opportunity to express yourselves and what you've learned from today, and yeah, just sort of to hear what you have to say more than anything, and for you to network with others who have attended today. So I've got 3 questions that I would like you to sort of discuss amongst your own sort of breakout rooms. Just a reminder, breakout rooms are not recorded, so you can express yourselves there. And the 3 questions is that we would like you to answer amongst yourselves is: have you thought about the effects that a lack of representation can have on the people / the communities that you support? What are some of the consequences lack of representation can have on the charity sector and the communities that you are supporting? And finally, what can we do to address the lack of representation? So once you're in the breakout rooms, I would like you to assign a main speaker who will feed in the information to us when we're all in the event together. It will be random, so if you can all introduce yourself, the organisations you're from, and then have a brainstorm of these 3 questions. I don't think the questions will appear in the breakout room, so if you want to take a photo of it on your phone or a device before we put you in the breakout room. And then we can put you in. Has everyone got a photo of the question? Okay, cool. Carrie, do you want to put them into the breakout rooms? And I'll see you in 10 minutes. Okay, who wants to go first? Who's going to volunteer? Go on, Sarah.
I'm just laughing because we actually ran out of time and didn't get through all of our questions. But the main conversation that came, from our group was, if someone's accessing a service and they can't see themselves in that service, or they might not be represented there, how then can that person feel confident or confident enough to actually access that service? And the barriers, we talked about things like feeling unrepresented, which then could lead to people's voices becoming suppressed. They might not want to come because they feel judged, and just we talked a bit about how important it is for representation. So that's not just, we weren't just talking about the staff in services, but how important that is for, breaking down those barriers for people to come into the services. And we really briefly touched on how can we, break down those barriers and become more accessible as services in, our sector. And we talked about training, having knowledge and training, bringing people in, delivering training to make sure that people who, whether that's the trustees or volunteers or the staff team, just making sure that we're as aware and trained as we can be, to make sure that we are, including everybody.
Thank you. Who wants to go next? What group? Yeah, okay, that was Shell.
Yeah, hi, Shell. We were group 5, I think. So yeah, much like Sarah, Lou said that we did run out of time and we kind of got a bit off track. But we kind of had 2 sort of major things that we talked about. One that Abdul Aziz brought up in our group was that that we need, I guess, more than just representation. We need like the foundation behind it as well. So there's no point in just hiring a bunch of people from a particular group, be that women or a specific ethnic group, without there being that foundation behind it of the culture of whatever organization you're in, of recognizing and respecting that particular group, and all groups really, because as he said, having, say, female police officers didn't stop Sarah Everard getting killed, because there's still that that atmosphere that isn't respecting women, and similarly, you could hire someone from a specific ethnicity in a corporation, and it doesn't mean that's going to be change everyone's attitude. So there's got to be that foundation behind it. And that was kind of one point that we talked about, and the other was how we access groups that we currently aren't representing. So we were sort of saying, because Helen was in my group from SmartWorks, and she was saying that that the people, the key people that they're helping are not from the same group as the people who are there volunteering and supporting. And it's the same for me in my role, that our organisation is very much of a white middle class background, and the women that we're supporting are not women from that background. And we did the volunteers I've recruited recently, we did actually recruit quite a lot from more diverse backgrounds, but it was what was helped that was the fact that one of our members of staff was a Muslim lady who went to a group specifically for Muslim ladies and helped and got recruitment from there. But we were sort of saying, how do we get into that in the first place if we hadn't happened to have a member of staff from that ethnicity, we wouldn't have been able to get into that in the first place, I suppose. So yeah, we were just kind of, I know it's gone off the point a little bit, sorry, but we were just sort of talking about how we get into that, and how we access those different groups that maybe at the minute we are not representing and not supporting. So
yeah, thank you for sharing. It is such a niche topic, but it can lead into so many other off-strand conversations, but they are all interlinked. And it's great to sort of that you are recognising that as a charity, whether it's HealthWorks or other organisations, that you are seeing it. Because initially my concern was that charities weren't seeing it and therefore weren't addressing it. But the fact that you are recognising it and you are trying to address it, whether it's taking on more employees from different ethnicities and backgrounds, then it's great to hear. And it just shows that we just have to continue having these conversations, even though they can be hard hitting and they can be uncomfortable, but that's the only way we can sort of change the sector for the better. Who would like to go next? Do you have anyone? Oh, Salah?
Hi, I can't remember what group we were in, but is it 2, 1? Can't remember that. But what we agreed was that the lack of representation definitely hinders the work that we do, or what, let's say, the service users would get out of it. It's really important to have role models, because it doesn't only kind of give you hope, but it makes you feel like you can actually, you know, be able to do what they're doing. And we mentioned that it's important that people in high positions who already have all these platforms try and do more to give other people the space to actually be able to be seen and encourage them. And another thing was money. We need to be able to fund those organizations that are trying to do their bit so that they too can rise, I guess, or be able to raise the profiles of their service users. Yeah, I think that is, Vicky, did I say everything? No.
Yeah, and the funding, funding's really important, because a lot of the community organisations don't get noticed, those smaller ones, and they don't know how to be seen and heard, and funding's really vital to keep them going.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your thoughts and the conversations that you guys are having. I think we've got 2 more groups, so 2 more speakers. Who would like to go?
I'm happy, sorry, 2 seconds. I'm currently in Belgium just looking after my grandma as well, and I just heard her shouting. So I can't remember what group I was in, but again, we just ended up having this wonderful conversation, and we just talked about, you know, I think we were all coming from the same place, that we knew that this is something that we needed, we knew, understood why it was needed as well, and the importance. And then we even started talking about Success for All and how, you know, we were struggling with a lack of representation from the male side as well, and the steps we were going to do to be able to do this. So and I think it was just really nice to talk about it, and hearing some of the other steps that some of the other charities were doing as well, whereby a change in leadership really helped to push forward the agenda of equality and diversity as well.
Wonderful, thank you. There's one more group. Might be wrong. No? Okay, that's everyone. Cool. So thank you, thank you everyone for attending today. It's been a pleasure seeing you all and having you join us on Success for All's very first public event. We couldn't have done this without the support of Connected Voice, who have been there every step of the way, lending us their support and help. So a huge thank you to Carrie and the Connected Voice team. I'm now going to hand you over to Rowan, just to go over a final evaluation before we end this event.
Okay, well, thank you, and it's been a pleasure listening to everyone's talks and experiences today. I'm here on behalf of Connected Voice, and just going to go through some of the stuff that we do in the support and development team, which is one of the wings of Connected Voice. So we support and development team, the aim is to build capabilities of people involved in groups and organisations across Newcastle and Gateshead to help make a positive difference to the people they serve. And we do this in a variety of different ways, some free, some charged for services, including choosing the appropriate legal structure for an organisation, setting up charities and community interest companies, supporting people to develop fundable projects and help writing their funding applications, writing policies and procedures, with which we have a specialism in safeguarding, climate and EDI policies. We can also undertake a organisational strength review for organisations in Newcastle and Gateshead to help them see the strengths of the organisation and where it can be improved. So since February to July this year, we managed to support 183 different groups and organisations in Newcastle and Gateshead, which I think is pretty impressive. We deliver 6 networking events each year. So we just had the mental health networking event a few weeks ago, which was our most highly attended and went really well. Lots of people making new connections. And then we have coming up the climate emergency networking event on the 3rd of November. So I'll drop a link to those once I finish speaking, and you can have a look at the networking events and also the training which we provide. There's a spring and summer training program and an autumn and winter program, which we're currently in the midst of. So there's lots there to have a look at. And yeah, I'll post a link to all that as well. We also run the Our Gateshead community website, which is my particular job in the support and development team. And if anyone has any events going on in Gateshead, or if you have any service users located in Gateshead, I'll drop my email too, and we'd love to offer some free publicisation through that site. So in conclusion, from the feedback that we got about support and development, people felt that they left more informed, more skilled, more confident, more ambitious, and ultimately more successful for the help that support and development gave them. And we'd hope to do some more of that for you. So if you think this can be of help to you, then do get in touch. connect@connectedvoice.org.uk would be our email if you have any queries about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rowan. I've just seen that Caroline, our founder here at Successful, would like to make an announcement. Caroline, the floor is yours, and then we can end it after there.
Hello, yes, thanks. Thank you everyone for coming. It was wonderful to listen to you all. My announcement is just a general one. Everybody knows that this month is Black History Month and a lot of events are taking place. For the past year, I've been working with a group of people who have initially made a calendar of African lives in Northern England, but then were invited to write a book. So been collaborating with them. And this book now is ready and has been launched. It was launched last Sunday at the Durham Book Festival. But this Saturday from 3 to 4, we're going to have a talk about this book in the City Library, and everybody is welcome to attend. And we're just gonna talk how we put the book together, but also we will highlight certain lives of people in there. So it's very much a historic book, going back all the way from the Roman times. Yes, African people were involved in the Roman times all the way to the 21st century. So I know it's short notice, but if you have nothing to do on a Saturday afternoon from 3 to 4, I invite you all to Newcastle City Library. That's it. Thanks, Lou-Jane.
Thank you. I'm sorry to change it up. Vicky, you have a few words to say?
Yeah, thanks for that. And yeah, just to say, I just wanted to chat. We've bought the book. We're going to look at it because it'll really help with our information with our cultural competency training. So we're looking forward to reading that. Yeah, just a quick update about Hareth, because that's part of Connected Voice, and just to let people know about that. So we're the Health Equality Project for ethnically minoritized communities. within Connected Voice. And at the heart of that is our HARIF network, Success for All, the Millin Centre, Takisi, they're all part of that network. We've got over 90 organisations representing different ethnically minoritized communities in that network, and it gives them people the voice and the space to look at health inequalities and access to health services. And we work with our HARIF Allies group, who are the organisations and services committed to tackling health inequalities and improve service delivery. And we do some of that by our cultural competency training. Isabel's here, who's our trainer for that. And that's for frontline health and wellbeing services, free in Newcastle. If people are interested in it, please get in touch. We're booking sessions now. But we also have our monthly bulletin for those who aren't signed up to that. You can go to the website and sign up, but we can share information about things you're doing, things out in the community, events, research, funding, all these sorts of things. So if there's things you want to share, you can put it in the bulletin, or if there's things you need to find out, it's worth signing up to that as well. And that's all for me, just an update about HARIF. But great event, Success for All, Lou Jane, Ursula, Caroline. It's been really, really interesting. I really appreciate the time and effort you've put into this.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Hopefully we will see you, I don't know, this time next year, and also regularly to have the similar conversations. Please do follow us on social media and across all platforms we're there, and enjoy the rest of your day and take care. Thank you for attending.